Hello, BookTube. Welcome to Lizziefaye Loves Books. I'm Elizabeth, and this is day 3 of the Little House Readathon. Now, I haven't been able to read quite as much as I had hoped to this weekend, but we'll go over all of that whenever I do a wrap-up of this readathon. But I've been trying to do a video every day on some topic related to Laura Ingalls Wilder, and today I wanted to give you a quick overview of all of the home sites that are available. Now, I'm not going to have time to edit in a bunch of pictures and things like that, but I will give you a little bit of information about each site and let you know the ones that I've been to, and we'll just go from there. Maybe in future years, if I continue to do this readathon, we can maybe zero in on one site per year or one site per day or something and go a little more in depth. But I have been to 3 of the places, and one of those places I've been to twice, and I hope to go to all the rest at some point. But it has been quite a few years, and I'm sure things have changed. In fact, if any of you have been to any of these sites more recently than I have, definitely let me know if any of my information is no longer correct. And so let's get started. Now, the first home site where Laura Ingalls was born is the Little House in the Big Woods, which is outside of Pepin, Wisconsin. I have never been there, but I did read a little book that I would recommend to you all that tells about all the places and all the things there are to see and do at all of the home sites, and this is the Little House Guidebook. Now, I have the 1996 edition, and I'm sure that it is very outdated at this point, because William Anderson, the author, not only does he tell you about the sites themselves, he also tells you where you can go to eat in that area, you know, where you could stay if you wanted to stay, hotels or motels or campgrounds or whatever. And I'm sure that a lot of that changes from year to year, but there is a newer edition of this, I think, that was published in 2007. And of course, now everything's online. So you can always just Google any particular site that you're interested in and find out their schedule, what's there. Most of these places are not open in the wintertime. They start opening up anywhere from March to May, and then may start closing by Labor Day or maybe into October. So you definitely want to check out where you're going and make sure that it's going to be open. So Pepin, Wisconsin has a lot of things to see and do. There's also camping and recreational things around Lake Pepin that you could do in addition to actually visiting the recreated home site. The cabin is not the original, it is a recreation. So then the next place is what's known as the Little House on the Prairie. It's outside of Independence, Kansas. And I had the pleasure of being able to go there with my mom. Emily was little. Emily was a toddler. Katie was just born. And we had gone to Oklahoma for my nephew's wedding. And after that, I said, hey, Mom, you know, talking to Randy, I'm like, could we do this? I'm like, Mom, do you want to go up to Independence, Kansas and see the Little House on the Prairie? She was in the middle of cancer treatments, and she was still up for it. She, you know, was excited to get to go. So here we are. Hold on one second. I've got to turn something off on my phone. There we go. So there we are at the Little House on the Prairie. It is also a recreation. And there's not, that one I think is kind of the most remote of the places. There's not any businesses right around it. There is a bookstore there that's run by the society that maintains that site. But as I recall, it's still very prairie-like right around that vicinity. So it is a nice place to visit. Okay, so then we have Walnut Grove. Now, Randy and I visited Walnut Grove and DeSmet and also Mount Rushmore and several other places all along that corridor going from Minneapolis, where I had been to a convention. We went all the way to Mount Rushmore, and we saw all the Laura Ingalls Wilder sites along that way, and we went in the late 90s. So that's been the last and only time that I've been to those places. But one picture I will show you, because the site of the dugout is outside of Walnut Grove, and this, of course, is on Plum Creek. This is the banks of Plum Creek. The dugout is gone, but there's a marker there, and there I am sitting in front of the marker where the dugout was. So there's lots to see and do in Walnut Grove. And then if you keep on going west, you come to DeSmet. That's the little town on the prairie. And there's plenty to see and do there. Then we also kept going, and we went to Mount Rushmore. And I did not realize that there was an Ingalls connection in Mount Rushmore. Turns out that Carrie Ingalls went to, she married David Swansea, who is credited for naming Mount Rushmore. And here's a really interesting thing. They have a museum there, Keystone Museum. And when we were there in the late 90s, we met this woman I'll show you her picture. You can see her right here. And I'll read you this, what I wrote under here. It says, here I am with Lois Halley. She knew Carrie Ingalls when her and her husband owned Halley's store. Carrie traded there. Lois is the curator of the Keystone Museum. Lois told us that Betty Haskell, Carrie's step-granddaughter, works in the museum on Tuesdays. It was Wednesday, so we didn't get to see her. So anyway, it was still very exciting to meet someone who at least knew one of the Ingalls when they were still living. That was kind of that was a dream come true for me, because I remember when I was reading some of the later Little House books, and I read in some of the notes about Mansfield and how there were people there who knew Laura, and you could talk to them at the museum. Well, by the time I ever got to go to Mansfield, I think pretty much everyone was dead and gone that had known her. At least they weren't there at that point. And I thought, I'm never going to get to meet anyone who knew Laura, but at least I got to meet someone who had met Carrie. So I'll take it. So anyway, there's a site in Burr Oak, Iowa, which was not included in Laura's books, but there is, I believe they've restored the Masters Hotel where her family worked. And there is also a site in Malone, New York. Now, I would recommend looking on YouTube and Googling, well, not Googling, but go on YouTube and search Dean Butler, Malone, New York, Almanzo Wilder. There's a really neat video about him helping to keep that site preserved. He goes there sometimes to sign autographs and things like that, and that was a really neat video. And thank you to Colleen for pointing that out to me. I think there is also a video on DVD about that too. So then, of course, the last one that I want to talk about is kind of the mecca for Laura Ingalls Wilder fans, and that's Mansfield, Missouri, Rocky Ridge Farm. Laura lived over 60 years there in Mansfield. And if you visit her house, you can see the whole house. You can also see it's called the Rock House on the same property where they lived for part of the time they were there. And there's a museum there, and there's just lots to see and do in Mansfield. So if you have the opportunity to go, then I think you should. And it's also not very far from Springfield and not very far from Branson, Missouri. So you could make a whole trip out of that. And there's plenty of things to do. When my mom and sister and I went there in 2003, I was already pregnant with Katie, and we took Emily along. She was a toddler. We also stopped at the Precious Moments headquarters, and that was really a neat place to visit too, which is somewhere around Springfield. So anyway, there's so much to see and do around this country that if you just kind of get off the interstate and know where you're going and what you're looking for, you can find all kinds of things to see and do and places to visit. So I don't want to run out of time before. I've literally tried filming this at least 3 other times prior to this when I wasn't sweating. Now I'm sweating, and I keep running out of time. I keep rambling. So now I've had to leave off some of the tidbits that I had wanted to include and some of the ramblings, but it is what it is. So that's all I have time for today. And I will come back tomorrow, hopefully, with a review of Caroline by Sarah Miller. I am about 70% done at this point. So I'll get that finished up and have that video for you at some point tomorrow. And then after that, a reading wrap up of everything that I've been able to read related to Laura Ingalls Wilder during these 4 days. So let me know what you're reading. Let me know if you have visited any of these sites. Also go to my Goodreads group, Lizziefaye's Comfy Corner. I've got a whole thread there where you can talk about if you visited any of these places and what you found there. I'm sorry I didn't get to go into more detail about it, but we'll hopefully do that sometime in the future. That's all for this video. I hope you're having a great day. Read a good book, and God bless you.